Hello, this is another video tutorial. I've gone directly into the StatPlanet software in our equimaps tool in the equimove webpage of our equity movement. Now, this is a very important chapter I want to introduce to you. This is the chapter on ethical redistribution. Now, how have we done this? This is related to the, of course, selection of the 14 healthy, feasible, and sustainable models. Amongst them, we've seen those that have the lowest GDP per capita. In fact, they've always been alternating from 1960 till 2012, Sri Lanka or Vietnam. So we've taken the average of both because they've always been together in that most efficient model. And we've identified that GDP per capita of the average Sri Lanka and Vietnam as the lower threshold of the equity zone, meaning that below that lower threshold, or also called dignity threshold in our book, no country ever in all the years recorded has been able to have the life expectancy and the survival rates in each age group of the 14 healthy, feasible, sustainable countries, that that health status that we consider should be accessible to all people. So by knowing the minimum threshold of resources and knowing as well the average of the world's GDP per capita, we've calculated a symmetric, following a normal distribution, upper threshold. So we here in the ethical distribution, we call deficit GDP per capita the deficit of countries, people in countries that have GDP per capita below the lower threshold. The surplus GDP per capita will be the excess GDP per capita of the countries living above the upper threshold of the equity curve. The excess accumulation GDP per capita will be that GDP in excess of the GDP above which there will be the incrementals of the GDP will be sufficient to satisfy the deficit and therefore a large proportion of the avoidable debts. Now the percentage of GDP for essential redistribution will be the percentage of the GDP in these countries with excess accumulation that will be required for that what we call essential redistribution. We believe that the first redistribution should start from that very excessive accumulation to meet the deficit, which is vital for many people to have a decent life. And then on a second stage, the percentage of GDP that should be required for normal redistribution would be the one that would apply to all countries in the surplus zone, so above the upper threshold. So gradually that excessive GDP that does not come with improved human well-being would gradually feed the equity zone. Now it's interesting that that equity zone under the GDP per capita of the average GDP per capita of the world today could very well live with lower global GDP, which means that we would have a good space for around a 30% degrowth, so that we could all have nice, happy lives with innovation for human well-being, not for excessive accumulation or luxuries, and while protecting our planet and not living in the very edge of damaging our planet. But that's another matter. We will develop that in a chapter on equity economics in our next in the next edition of our book. But now let's see, having had that introduction, let's see how deficit GDP per capita looks like. So this is you could even have you can do this just to see whenever you're doing this, you can see the countries with highest GDP per capita, let's say, deficit. So if they're around 1,800, I'm afraid those countries are the ones that have no data. So we have all of the lower threshold as X as deficit. But here Burundi is the first one in this case and is around 1,500. So let's put here our threshold of around 1,200. Let's see how the world looks like now. So you see, this is the deficit zone in year 2012, and it shows the countries in blues with very, very high deficit and the countries in lighter blue in lower deficit. You can also see this in different diverging colors, so it would be more telling if you want. Let's put the red as the alarming ones here, and here you go. This is how it looks like. Now, of course, in blue countries, and you can put this as 0 here, countries where this deficit does not exist, is negative. Okay, so this is how it looks like, the deficit in the world, and you can also see how it has been evolving since 1961. There you go. So obviously in these previous years the deficits were lower because the GDPs were lower. We would see them now turning in colors. We could have done that from the beginning with lower thresholds here, but I'm sure you will very soon know how to start working with Stat Planet, the legend, the videos, the graphs, and everything. There you go. Most likely we'll start now seeing how they turn orange, orange, red, reddish, and more orange, and this is how it looks like today. Alright, so now let's look at the other indicator of surplus. So in a similar fashion, this is how it would look like. The countries with in red would have a very high surplus. This is off the top, so you can again see which is the highest surplus here. Monaco has a surplus of 128,000. That's how automatically this legend selected this very, very high threshold. So let's put it here around 50,000, and the rest in more or less the same shape. So here's how the world looks like in terms of excess surplus GDP to have a healthy life. This is another interesting one, and you can do the video of course and everything. This is the excess accumulation, the countries with the first primarily responsibility in redistribution. Let's put this again a bit lower, 40,000, sorry, and we will see the countries that are in excess accumulation in different periods. Let's put this at the lower level to see how it looks like. Okay, there you go. And now let's see the last of the indicators on the percentage of GDP that would be required for essential redistribution. You see here the different percentages. Some are very high, like countries like Monaco, and followed by Norway, and here Luxembourg, and the very, very wealthy countries that would be required to contribute with a very high percentage of the GDP for the equity zone. And this would be the last one, the percentage of the GDP required for normal redistribution. Those would be the countries that would need to do that. From percentages of over 70%, this would be the group of excess accumulation, to the countries of 0.2% or so. So I hope you can find this chapter of indicators as interesting for your studies, for your teaching, probably for your initiatives. We think it's a very essential part of our work, and we will also be very grateful if you help us improve it, update it, and link it to good proposals for a better world. Thank you.